The reinforced viewport of Observation Deck 7 shuddered with every guttural roar from the containment cell, a sound that sent a fresh wave of terror through the assembled Xylosian diplomats, their antennae quivering like plucked string. Inside the massive, cryo-dampened enclosure, the Gamelon beast's designated subject Stella slammed a clawed fist against the transparent plasteel, its crimson eyes blazing with a fury that promised evisceration to anything within reach. A nightmare given form that had already sent 3 other species representatives fleeing Station Epsilon in sheer panic. But Kevin Miller, a junior xenobiologist intern armed only with a datapad and an overly empathetic heart, just winced, noting on his log, "Subject exhibits extreme distress signals. Current containment protocols appear to exacerbate, not alleviate. Consider offering a blanket." He stood near the periphery of the observation gallery, deliberately out of the main thoroughfare of bustling officials and armed security. His station-issue jumpsuit, a size too large, seemed to emphasize his junior status amongst the crisp uniforms and gleaming carapaces of the Xylosian delegation. No one sought his opinion. His datapad entries were for internal cataloging, not policy-making. It was like with old Sparky, the rescued mastiff from his childhood, whose thunderous barks had terrified the neighborhood until Kevin had shown them the tremor of fear in the dog's deep-set eyes, the desperate plea beneath the noise. Another specimen to be managed, not understood, Kevin thought, a familiar ache of disillusionment tightening his chest as he watched the Xylosians flinch with each roar. He'd been meticulously documenting Stella's reactions for weeks, patterns emerging from the chaos that no one else seemed to register. He'd noted the almost imperceptible tightening of Stella's massive obsidian-hued shoulders just before a fresh wave of klaxons blared for a shift change, and the way her roars pitched higher, sharper, when the guards performed their hourly perimeter check, their heavy magnetic boots thudding with aggressive resonance too close to the plasteel. But last cycle, during an unscheduled power reroute that had dimmed the primary lights and silenced the omnipresent, grating hum of the station's atmospheric processes for a full 3 minutes, Stella had actually settled. Her breathing, usually a harsh, amplified rasp that echoed through the deck's speakers, had deepened, almost evening out into something approaching calm. The cell itself was an abomination of function over feeling. Gleaming, sterile white walls reflected the stark, shadowless illumination from overhead panels' lights that never dimmed to mimic a natural cycle, never offered respite. The air, recycled and tinged with the metallic tang of the cryodampeners and the sharp scent of ozone from the crackling energy field that lined the plasteel, hummed with a dozen competing, unsettling frequencies from hidden machinery. No softness, no natural textures, just cold, hard surfaces designed to contain, to control, to intimidate. On a wall-mounted display, Commander Thorne's face appeared, lines etched deep around his mouth and eyes, like canyons on a far moon. He heard a report from a stern security head, whose image wavered with noise. Thorne's voice, when he spoke, was brief, without emotion, a tool honed to a single aim: maintain current protocols, double the energy feed to the perimeter restraints. I want 0 chance of breach. This asset stays contained. His gaze, cold as the void between stars, flicked towards the viewport showing Stella, hard and unyielding. Nearby, separated from the agitated Xylosians by a cordon of station guards, Dr. Aris Thorne, the lead xenobiologist, and, as rumor had it, the commander's sibling, watched Stella with a different kind of intensity. Her eyes, magnified by data lenses that cast faint blue light onto her cheekbones, scanned the readouts flowing across her own datapad. Kevin had tried once a week ago during a data review. "Doctor," he'd ventured, his voice barely above a whisper, "I've noticed Subject Stella's agitation correlates with the sonic scrubber activations. Perhaps the frequency." Dr. Thorne had cut him off with a dismissive wave of her hand, not even looking up. "Intern Miller, your empathy is noted. However, we are dealing with a Class A predator, not a stray pet. Its reactions are instinctual, not emotional distress. Stick to cataloging output, please." The memory still stung, the casual clinical dismissal of any possibility beyond dangerous specimen. Kevin dragged his attention back to Stella. The current uproar had subsided slightly, the Xylosians murmuring nervously amongst themselves. And there it was. That almost inaudible rumble, too low for the station's sophisticated audio pickups to flag as aggression, more like the distant thrum of a wounded engine, a vibration felt more than heard. He saw the slight tremor in her left hand, the one not currently pressed against the plasteel, not the violent shaking of rage, but a finer, more persistent shiver, like an animal trying to control its overwhelming fear. And the way she angled her massive head, her crimson eyes now less blazing, more like banked coals, in the gloom of her self-imposed shadow, subtly avoiding the direct glare of a newly activated spotlight on her enclosure. These weren't the actions of a mindless monster. He typed another private note, shielding the datapad with his body from any curious onlookers or surveillance sweeps. All indicators point to trauma-induced defensive behavior, not inherent malice. Subject is terrified, not malevolent. Capture, isolation, the constant barrage of unfamiliar, aggressive stimuli from beings she clearly perceived as threats. It was a recipe for terror, and Stella's fury was its most logical, most heartbreaking expression. Just then, two guards, clad in heavy response armor that made them look like robotic beetles, stomped past Stella's viewport, deliberately rapping their stun batons against the plasteel as a show of dominance. Stella recoiled, a fresh roar tearing from her, a sound raw with something Kevin recognized with a sickening lurch in his stomach as pure, unadulterated fear. His gut clenched. Enough. He couldn't change the protocols, not from his position. Not yet, but he could do something. A small thing. An unnoticeable thing, perhaps, but something. The thought, the absurdly gentle thought from earlier, resurfaced, no longer a hesitant question, but a quiet, burning perseverance, a blanket, or something like it, something to offer a sliver of comfort in this cold, hard place. His mind raced, possibilities flickering and dying like faulty circuits. How? When? The nutrient delivery chute was too small for anything substantial, designed for paste and pellets. The air filtration system? Too risky, too complex to access without authorization codes he'd never possess. He glanced around the viewing area, his gaze noting service hatches, utility lines nearly lost behind wall sections, the usual habits of the busy officials, and the constantly vigilant, ever tense security. An idea, fragile as a newborn star, began to form, a whisper of a plan. It would be a risk, a monumental breach of protocol if discovered, career-ending most likely. But as Stella slammed her fist against the plasteel again, a sound that was less fury now and more a desperate, cracking plea that echoed in the bones. Kevin knew he had to try. This wouldn't be first contact as space expected it, with starships and grand welcomes. This would be something quite different, a quiet solace in a cosmos of worry. During his routine sanitation duties near Stella's containment cell, Kevin subtly altered his cleaning path. He lingered a few extra seconds near a specific ventilation grate, angling the sonic scrubber to maximize the airflow. The hum of the device vibrated against the cool metal, the sterile scent of the cleaning solution filling the air, a stark contrast to the almost palpable tension radiating from the other side of the plasteel. He hoped the slight change would offer Stella a more comfortable environment, a small rebellion against the harsh containment protocols. While pretending to inspect a junction box, its access panel cold and metallic against his fingertips, Kevin discreetly activated a low-frequency hum on his datapad. It was a frequency, he theorized, might be soothing to Gamilons, based on extrapolated data about the resonant properties of their homeworld's crust. He glanced furtively at the security camera, then pressed the datapad closer to the ventilation grate, the faint vibration barely audible even to him. Stella, initially pacing agitatedly, her claws rasping against the plasteel floor, paused near the ventilation grate. She cocked her massive head slightly, her crimson eyes seeming to focus on the source of the almost imperceptible hum. It was a subtle movement, so slight the automated sensors wouldn't register it as anything other than random motion, but Kevin's heart leaped. Later, back in his Spartan quarters, the dim light reflecting off the metallic walls, Kevin recorded his observations in his private log. His stylus tapped softly against the datapad. Subject exhibited a possible, though inconclusive, response to modified airflow and low-frequency hum. Pacing decreased by 7%. Further observation required. Suggests auditory and olfactory sensitivity may be underestimated. He hesitated, then added, possible correlation, but requires further. A non-standard investigation. The next day, Commander Thorne's face filled the security monitor. His sharp eyes narrowed as he reviewed routine footage. He paused the playback, rewinding slightly. Kevin Miller, sanitation tech, altering his cleaning path. Kevin Miller fiddling with his datapad near Subject Stella's cell. A flicker of suspicion crossed Thorne's face, his lips tightening. Thorne summoned Kevin to his office for a routine check-in. The sterile scent of disinfectant hung heavy in the air. Miller, Thorne began, his voice controlled. I was reviewing sanitation logs. Noticed some deviations in your assigned route near holding cell Alpha 9. Anything to report? He leaned back in his chair, his gaze unwavering. And I also noted you were spending an unusual amount of time near the cell while pretending to inspect equipment. What exactly were you inspecting? Kevin, caught off guard, felt a flush creep up his neck. He swallowed, trying to maintain his composure. Sir, I was just testing new cleaning techniques, trying to improve efficiency. The standard route. It's not optimal for airflow. He forced himself to meet Thorne's gaze. As for the equipment, I was experimenting with white noise to help me concentrate. It's a noisy environment, sir. He carefully avoided any mention of Stella or his theories about Gamelon auditory sensitivity. Thorne seemed to consider his explanation, his expression unreadable. After a long, tense silence, he spoke, his voice stern. I appreciate your initiative, Miller, but protocol is protocol. Subject Stella is a class, a threat. Unauthorized interaction is strictly prohibited. And frankly, he added, his voice filled with dismissal, any speculation about soothing frequencies is unscientific. and a waste of station resources. Stick to your assigned duties. That afternoon, the atmosphere around Stella's cell crackled with tension. Security personnel, visibly on edge after Thorne's inquiry, increased their presence, their weapons held a little tighter. Stella, sensing the shift, reacted violently. Her roars became more frequent, more guttural, the containment cell shuddering with each impact. Witnessing Stella's increased distress, the deafening roar echoing in his ears, Kevin felt a growing conflict between his duty and his empathy. Was he making things worse? Was his interference only exacerbating her fear? But the thought of abandoning her, of leaving her to suffer in this sterile prison, was unbearable. Despite the increased security, Kevin managed a covert action. Using his access to the station's botanical lab, the earthy scent of alien flora clinging to his uniform, he soaked a small, porous rock in a synthesized scent mimicking Gamilon flora. Under the cover of a routine equipment check, he discreetly placed the rock near the ventilation grate, his heart pounding in his chest. Stella cautiously approached the grate, her massive head lowered. She sniffed the rock, her initial aggression momentarily subsiding as she seemed to analyze the scent. Her nostrils flared, drawing in the artificial aroma. It was a clear indication that she recognized and was intrigued by the new stimulus. Later that evening, Dr. Aris Thorne, reviewing Stella's physiological data, noticed a slight but measurable decrease in her cortisol levels during the period when the synthesized scent was introduced. He frowned, tapping his stylus against the screen. "Minor deviation," he muttered to himself, attributing it to random fluctuation. Inconclusive. Kevin, observing Stella's olfactory response from the observation deck, his gaze fixed on her every movement, felt a surge of conviction. Understanding her sensory needs, he realized, was the key to alleviating her distress and unlocking her true nature. He had to continue despite the risks. A brief, unexplained distortion flickered across the security camera feed focused on the ventilation grate near Stella's cell. The image blurred for a crucial few seconds, obscuring Kevin's actions. The anomaly went unnoticed by station security, lost in the endless stream of data. For a brief period after the scent introduction, Stella's roars became less frequent and less intense. They were replaced by a series of low, almost mournful, rumbles, a sound that resonated deep within Kevin's chest. It was a temporary state of relative calm, a fleeting moment of peace in the heart of the storm. That night, Kevin made a new log entry, his voice low and determined, acknowledging increased security and potential consequences. However, the well-being of a sentient being outweighs adherence to potentially harmful protocols. Protocols should serve understanding, not hinder it. I will continue to seek solutions, regardless of the risks. As Kevin exited the observation deck, one of the Xylosian diplomats, who had previously fled in terror at the sight of Stella, lingered near the viewport. His multifaceted eyes, usually wide with fear, were now fixed on Stella's cell with a mixture of apprehension and a newfound hesitant curiosity. He tilted his head, his antennae twitching slightly, as if trying to decipher the mournful rumbles emanating from within. Kevin volunteered for the overnight sanitation shift, claiming the need to catch up on paperwork, a flimsy excuse that even he didn't believe. But it got him what he wanted: hours alone with Stella, or at least with the muted hum of the containment field separating them. The observation deck was a tomb at this hour, the only light emanating from the soft glow panels, illuminating Stella's enclosure. The air hung thick with the recycled scent of disinfectant and a metallic tang that always seemed to cling to Station Epsilon. He settled into a creaky chair, datapad in hand, but his eyes rarely left Stella. She was a silhouette against the cryo-dampened plasteel, a mountain of muscle and chitin. But even in the dim light, Kevin could see a subtle shift in her posture. She wasn't pacing with the same frantic energy as during the day. She was still. Hours drifted by. Kevin meticulously logged every twitch, every vocalization. Then he noticed it, a fluttering beneath her heavy eyelids, rapid eye movement. Her massive chest rose and fell in a slow rhythmic pattern, punctuated by soft, guttural sighs that sounded almost dreamlike. He zoomed in with his datapad's camera, confirming the rapid eye movement. Subdued clicks and whistles escaped her throat, too quiet for the station's external microphones to register. Dreaming, he typed into his log. Subject exhibits periods of REM-like activity. Vocalizations suggest possible emotional processing during sleep cycle. A chilling thought struck him. What if Stella's aggression wasn't just a reaction to captivity, but a symptom of something more profound? What if she was being driven mad by dream deprivation? The harsh, unyielding light, the constant hum of machinery, the jarring alarms, it was a sensory assault. He imagined trying to sleep under those conditions. It would be torture. Hypothesis: aggressive behavior may be exacerbated by inadequate sleep environment. Consider effects of reduced lighting and ambient noise. He glanced at the lighting controls. A panel of forbidden switches. Containment protocol strictly forbade any alteration to the cell's environment without explicit authorization. But the thought of Stella, trapped in a nightmare she couldn't escape, gnawed at him. He reached out, his fingers hovering over the dimmer switch. A sudden sharp beam of light sliced through the darkness. "Miller?" Commander Thorne stood silhouetted in the doorway, his face grim, a high-powered flashlight clutched in his hand. The beam landed squarely on Kevin, blinding him momentarily. "What's going on here?" Thorne's voice was sharp, edged with suspicion. Kevin recoiled, his heart hammering against his ribs. He hadn't heard Thorne approach. He scrambled for an explanation, his mind racing. "Sir." "Equipment malfunctioned, sir," he stammered, forcing a tone of professional concern. "The lighting system, it started flickering. I was just trying to diagnose the problem before it affected the containment field." He tapped the control panel with feigned expertise. "Seems like a faulty regulator. I was about to run a diagnostic." Thorne advanced, his expression unreadable. He scanned the control panel, then fixed his gaze on Kevin. "You're a xenobiologist, intern Miller, not a technician. And those lights are dimmed to near darkness. That's a direct violation of containment protocol." Kevin swallowed hard. "I know, sir, but nothing." Thorne cut him off. "Subject Stella is a Class A threat. We maintain strict protocols for a reason. Her behavior is unpredictable. Reduced lighting compromises security. Is that understood?" "Yes, sir," Kevin mumbled, shame burning in his cheeks. Thorne stepped closer, his voice dropping to a low, menacing growl. "I'm going to pretend I didn't see this, Miller, but if I catch you deviating from protocol again, there will be disciplinary action. Understood? This isn't some petting zoo. That thing is dangerous." He turned and strode out of the observation deck, leaving Kevin alone in the darkness, the threat hanging heavy in the air. The next morning, Dr. Aris Thorne's voice crackled over the station's .com system. "Miller, report to my lab immediately." Kevin's stomach plummeted. He knew this was coming. Dr. Thorne's lab was a sterile environment of gleaming chrome and humming equipment. Data streams cascaded across multiple monitors, displaying complex waveforms and numerical readout. Dr. Thorne, a tall, imposing figure, with a severe expression, stood before a holographic projection of Stella's brain activity. "Commander Thorne informed me of your equipment malfunction, Miller," she said, her voice devoid of emotion. "He also mentioned the reduced lighting. I'm requesting a full analysis of subject Stella's sleep cycles, comparing her nocturnal activity with and without the reduced lighting. I want that data on my desk by 1,800 hours. Kevin nodded, relieved that he wasn't being immediately fired. "Yes, Doctor." The data analysis consumed him for the rest of the day. He pored over the sensor readings, comparing Stella's brainwave patterns, hormone levels, and activity logs. The results were undeniable. During the brief period of reduced lighting, Stella's agitation levels had decreased significantly. Her cortisol production, a key indicator of stress, had plummeted. He compiled his findings into a detailed report, highlighting the statistically significant correlation between reduced lighting and improved sleep quality. He even included a speculative section on the potential benefits of a more humane sleep environment. Emboldened by the data, Kevin approached Dr. Thorne with his findings. "Doctor, the data clearly shows that reduced lighting has a calming effect on subject Stella. I believe we should consider implementing a more humane sleep environment, including dimmed lights, ambient sounds, and perhaps even a softer resting surface." Thorne listened intently, her expression unreadable. When he finished, she steepled her fingers and regarded him with a cool, appraising gaze. "Your data is intriguing, Miller," she conceded. "However, implementing such changes would require a significant deviation from established protocol. It would also necessitate budgetary adjustments. I'm not convinced that the potential benefits outweigh the risks and the logistical challenges." Kevin's hopes began to fade. "But Doctor, if it could improve her well-being, wouldn't it be worth it?" Dr. Thorne sighed. "I will consider your proposal, Miller, but I make no promises. In the meantime, adhere strictly to protocol. Understood?" "Yes, Doctor," Kevin replied, his voice heavy with disappointment. Days turned into weeks, and Kevin heard nothing more about his proposal. He watched Stella, her agitation slowly returning as the benefits of the brief period of reduced lighting faded. He couldn't stand by and do nothing. He started spending his breaks in the station's recycling center, scavenging discarded materials. He gathered scraps of soft padding, discarded thermal blankets, and lengths of flexible tubing. He worked in secret, piecing together a makeshift bed, a crude but functional platform of comfort. During his next sanitation round, he smuggled the makeshift bed into Stella's cell, concealing it beneath his cleaning cart. He positioned it in a corner of the enclosure, hoping she would find it. He watched from the observation deck, his heart pounding with anticipation. Stella approached the strange object cautiously, her crimson eyes narrowed. She sniffed it tentatively, her massive head twitching. She circled it slowly, her claws clicking against the metal floor. Then, gingerly, she settled down onto the makeshift bed, her weight compressing the padding. She let out a soft, rumbling sigh, a sound that Kevin had never heard before. It sounded almost content. A jarring klaxon shattered the quiet. Red lights flashed throughout the station. "Security breach. Sector 7. Proximity sensor triggered in containment cell. Alpha." Kevin's blood ran cold. The proximity sensors inside Stella's cell were designed to detect any unauthorized additions to her environment. He had been caught. He raced to the observation deck, his heart pounding. Commander Thorne was already there, his face a mask of fury. "Miller!" Thorne roared, his voice echoing through the corridor. "What the hell have you done now?" Thorne stormed into the observation area, followed by 2 armed security guards. He pointed accusing finger at Kevin. "You deliberately violated containment protocol. You jeopardized the safety of this entire station. What do you have to say for yourself?" Kevin stood his ground, his voice trembling but firm. "I provided Subject Stella with a bed, sir. A place to rest comfortably. She's a sentient being, not just an animal. She deserves basic comfort and respect." "Respect?" Thorne scoffed. "That thing is a monster. It could tear us all apart if it got loose." "You're putting your sentimental feelings before the safety of everyone on this station." "She's not a monster, sir," Kevin insisted, his voice rising. "She's scared and confused. She's reacting to her environment. If we treat her with kindness and understanding, she might actually respond in kind." "Kindness? Understanding?" Thorne spat the words out like venom. "You're naive, Miller. You're letting your emotions cloud your judgment. This isn't some fairy tale. This is reality. And in reality, that thing is a threat." As their argument escalated, a low, guttural rumble filled the observation deck. Stella had risen from her bed. She positioned herself between Kevin and Thorne, her massive frame blocking Thorne's path. Her crimson eyes were fixed on Thorne, burning with a fierce, protective intensity. A low growl vibrated from her chest, a clear warning. Thorne stared at Stella, his face paling slightly. He hesitated, then barked an order at his guards. "Stand down!" "Stand down," I said. The guards lowered their weapons, their faces etched with confusion. Thorne took a step back, his eyes never leaving Stella. "What is the meaning of this?" he muttered, his voice barely audible. Dr. Aris Thorne appeared in the doorway, her expression a mixture of surprise and fascination. She observed the scene unfold, her eyes darting between Kevin, Stella, and Commander Thorne. "Fascinating," she murmured, her voice barely a whisper. "It appears an unexpected bond has formed." Commander Thorne, unnerved by Stella's protectiveness, abruptly ended the confrontation. His lips pursed. "That's enough," he barked, the fluorescent lights glinting off the silver braid on his shoulder. "Miller, you are to stay away from Subject Stella, except when performing assigned duties. Is that understood?" He didn't wait for a response, his gaze flicking pointedly away from Dr. Thorne as he turned on his heel, the metallic click of his boots echoing down the sterile corridor. Later that evening, after his sanitation shift, Kevin found Dr. Aris Thorne waiting for him near the staff mess hall. The scent of recycled protein paste hung heavy in the air, but Dr. Thorne seemed unfazed. "Miller," she said, her voice low and surprisingly gentle, "I was fascinated by Stella's behavior during your little intervention. Her reaction to you was unexpected. I'd like to understand it better." She adjusted her glasses, the lenses magnifying her intense gaze. "I'm requesting your assistance in designing a less stressful observation protocol. Unofficially, of course." The next day, Dr. Thorne granted Kevin access to a restricted data terminal. "This is everything we have on Gamelon physiology and behavior," she explained, her fingers flying across the holographic keyboard. "It's flawed, incomplete, based on limited observation and a lot of speculation. But it's a start." Kevin's eyes widened as he scrolled through the files, a mixture of excitement and apprehension swirling within him. He, in turn, provided Dr. Thorne with his detailed observation logs, meticulously documenting Stella's reactions to various stimuli. The collaboration was formal, professional, but an undercurrent of unease lingered between them. Based on Kevin's input, Dr. Thorne proposed a new experiment. "We're going to try controlled sensory deprivation," she announced during a briefing with the station's security team. "Gradually reduce light and sound levels in Stella's cell, monitor her response. See if it reduces her agitation." Commander Thorne, arms crossed, raised a skeptical eyebrow. "You're going to remove her defenses? That seems ill-advised." Dr. Thorne waved a dismissive hand. "It's a controlled experiment, Commander. We'll be monitoring her every move." As the lights dimmed and the soundproofing engaged, Stella began to pace restlessly, her massive form casting long shadows across the cell. Low growls rumbled from her chest, vibrating through the reinforced plasteel. Security personnel shifted nervously, their hands hovering near their sidearms. Kevin, watching the monitors, felt a pang of anxiety. He was pushing Stella into the unknown. Suddenly, almost without thinking, Kevin began to hum. It was a simple lullaby, one his mother used to sing to him when he was a child, a soft, wavering melody that filled the observation room. He hadn't even realized he was doing it until he saw Stella pause, her head cocked to one side, her crimson eyes fixed on the observation window. Then, to everyone's astonishment, Stella attempted to mimic the sound. A series of guttural, melodic sounds emerged from her throat, rough and alien, but undeniably echoing the rhythm and tone of Kevin's lullaby. It was a clumsy, imperfect imitation, but it was also a clear attempt at communication, a bridge being built across the vast gulf between their species. Dr. Thorne's eyes widened, a spark of excitement igniting within them. "Record that," she snapped, her fingers flying across her datapad. "Analyze the sonic patterns. This could be a key to understanding their language." "It appears to be rhythmic communication." But Commander Thorne remained unconvinced. "This is getting out of hand," he growled, his gaze fixed on Kevin. "I'm starting to think you're sabotaging this experiment, Miller. Manipulating the results. I want a full investigation into your activities." The investigation never materialized, because the next day, during a routine examination, Stella suddenly collapsed. Alarms blared, red lights flashed, and the station's medical team rushed to her aid. But they were baffled. Her physiology was unlike anything they had ever encountered. They couldn't diagnose the cause of her collapse. "Her vital signs are plummeting," a medical technician shouted, his voice strained. "We're losing her!" Kevin, watching helplessly from the observation room, felt a wave of despair wash over him. He scanned the Gamilon research data, desperately searching for a clue. Then a detail caught his eye, a brief mention of specific minerals essential to Gamilon physiology. "Wait," he shouted, his voice cracking with urgency. "What about her diet? Does it include those minerals?" Dr. Thorne, her face etched with worry, consulted the station's nutrition protocols. "No," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "They're not included. We assumed a standard protein-based diet would be sufficient." "It's not," Kevin insisted, his heart pounding in his chest. "She needs those minerals now." With time running out, Dr. Thorne made a desperate decision. "Prepare a concentrated mineral solution," she ordered, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. "Inject it into her. Now, it's a long shot, but it's all we've got." The medical team worked frantically, injecting the solution into Stella's massive arm. For what felt like an eternity, nothing happened. Then, slowly, Stella's vital signs began to stabilize. Her breathing became less labored, her heart rate steadied. Commander Thorne, witnessing Stella's recovery, was forced to acknowledge Kevin's contribution, though his voice was tight with resentment. "All right, Miller," he conceded, his gaze averted. "You were right about the minerals, but that doesn't change anything. I'm still watching you." Later that night, Dr. Thorne summoned Kevin to her private lab. "I found something," she said, her voice hushed with excitement. "A hidden file within the Gamilon research data. Information about Stella's homeworld, its atmospheric composition, geological features, indigenous flora." She paused, her eyes gleaming. "It's a long shot, but I think I know how to help her." Dr. Thorne proposed a daring experiment, recreating the atmospheric conditions of Stella's homeworld within a small section of her cell. It was a risky proposition, one that could potentially breach containment, but the potential reward was immense. Kevin, while supportive, couldn't shake a feeling of unease. "Are you sure this is safe?" he asked, his voice tinged with concern. Altering her environment so drastically it could trigger an unpredictable reaction, exacerbate her stress levels. Before the experiment began, Dr. Thorne allowed Kevin a brief, supervised moment with Stella. As he stood before the reinforced plasteel, expressing his concerns in a soft, soothing voice, Stella reached out, her massive clawed hand extending towards him. And then, gently, almost tentatively, she touched his hand, her touch surprisingly warm and soft. It was a gesture of reassurance, a silent communication of trust and understanding. Stella's gait remained uneven, a subtle hitch in her stride that betrayed the lingering effects of the mineral deficiency. Kevin gently steadied her as she shifted her massive weight, his hand barely spanning the width of her scaled forearm. He logged the observation. Subject Stella, exhibiting improved mobility, but continued weakness, noted in left hind limb. Supplementation regimen ongoing. He spent hours like this, a silent vigil in the observation booth, cataloging every twitch, every vocalization, every minute shift in her behavior. The rhythmic hum of the station's life support barely registered. His focus was entirely on the being before him. He knew intellectually that Supervisor Thorne often observed him too, watching from the clear, steady focus of the security cameras. Thorne, in his plain, functional office, reviewed the security feeds. Miller, always Miller, hovering around the Gamilon like a moon orbiting a volatile planet. He trusted the kid's heart, maybe, but his head, that was another matter. Increased surveillance on Sector Gamma 7. He barked into the corn, his voice a gravelly rumble. "I want to know every breath Miller takes." Back in the lab, Dr. Aris Thorne stared at holographic schematics, his brow furrowed in frustration, recreating a Gamilon atmosphere. "It's like trying to bottle a supernova," he muttered. "The gas mixtures alone, the pressure gradients, the temperature fluctuations." He rattled off a string of technical specifications that would have made Kevin's head spin. A chime at his console brought unwelcome news. "Dr. Thorne," a clipped voice announced, "we've encountered a critical shortage of xylosian tetrafluoride. The trade dispute, it's impacting our supply chain." Thorne hit his fist on the desk. Xylosian tetrafluoride was a rare gas, crucial for replicating the dense, nitrogen-rich atmosphere of Stella's homeworld. Without it, the experiment and Stella's recovery were in jeopardy. Unbeknownst to Thorne, Kevin was taking matters into his own hands. Under the guise of submitting a routine maintenance request, he accessed a secure .com channel. "This is Miller, Station Epsilon, requesting assistance from Dr. Anya Sharma." A pause. "Anya, it's me. I need your expertise. I need you to synthesize a substitute for xylosian tetrafluoride. I know it's a long shot, but Stella's life may depend on it." Days later, a small, unmarked container arrived in Kevin's possession. Inside, a vial of shimmering violet gas. A message from Anya accompanied it. "Miller, this is experimental. The molecular structure is similar, but it's untested on gamelon physiology. Handle with extreme caution. Instability is a fact. Precise calibration is essential." Dr. Thorne paced his lab running simulations. The synthesized substitute. The data was promising, but the risks were undeniable. A potential explosion. A toxic reaction. Neurological damage. He weighed the possibilities, his face etched with worry. But Stella, her condition was deteriorating. He had to do something. In her cell, Stella paced restlessly, her guttural vocalizations growing more frequent, more distressed. The sounds resonated through the station, a mournful cry that tugged at Kevin's heart. He knew she needed her homeworld atmosphere, and she needed it now. With a deep breath, Dr. Thorne made his decision. "Initiate atmospheric introduction," he ordered, his voice tight with apprehension. "But proceed with extreme caution. Isolate Sector Gamma 7. Monitor all vital signs. And Miller, I'm trusting you on this." Kevin, his hands trembling slightly, adjusted the controls. Slowly, meticulously, the synthesized gas mixture began to flow into a small, isolated section of Stella's cell. He watched her every move, his heart pounding in his chest. At first, nothing. Then, a subtle shift. Stella paused, her head cocked, sniffing the air. A low rumble emanated from her chest. A sound that wasn't fear, but curiosity. She tentatively stepped into the altered environment, her crimson eyes widening. A flicker of something, akin to contentment, crossed her features. Suddenly, an unexpected phenomenon. Stella's thick, segmented hide began to shimmer, subtle patterns of bioluminescence spreading across her form. Hues of deep blues, vibrant greens, and fiery oranges pulsed beneath her scales, colors never before seen on a gamelon. Commander Thorne, watching from the security monitors, recoiled. "What in the blazes is that?" he exclaimed, his voice filled with alarm. "Seal off Sector Gamma 7. Initiate containment breach protocol." "No," Kevin shouted, overriding the comm system. "Don't do it." "It's working. She's responding positively." Ignoring Thorne's orders, he frantically deactivated the lockdown sequence, his fingers flying across the control panel. He knew that sudden confinement, the flashing lights and blaring sirens, would only send Stella into a panic. Stella, her bioluminescent patterns intensifying, suddenly froze, her head snapping towards a seemingly empty section of the cell wall. A low growl rumbled in her throat, her eyes narrowed with intense focus. It was as if she could see something. Kevin followed her gaze, his mind racing. What was she sensing? Then he saw it, a tiny, almost imperceptible shimmer in the air, a distortion in the light. He reached out, his fingers brushing against something small and metallic, hidden behind a panel. He yanked it free, a highly sensitive surveillance device, far more advanced than standard station equipment. It was focused directly on him. His blood ran cold. "Thorn," he said, his voice tight with anger. "What is this?" Thorn's image flickered on the comm screen, his face grim. "Security protocols, Miller. I had to be sure you weren't compromising the experiment." "Compromising?" Kevin spat. "This is a targeted surveillance device. It's unauthorized." "You were spying on me." Stella, sensing the rising tension, moved with surprising speed, positioning herself between Kevin and Thorn's image on the screen. She fixed the commander with a menacing glare, a low growl rumbling in her chest, a clear declaration of allegiance. Suddenly the lights flickered, alarms blared. The atmospheric control system sputtered and died, sparks flying from the damaged console. A high-pitched whine filled the air, followed by a deafening crack. An uncontrolled surge of energy erupted from Stella, a blinding flash of violet light that overloaded the containment field generators. The field flickered, then shattered, releasing a surge of the synthesized gas into the surrounding area. The station lurched. The containment breach was imminent. Stella's fate and the station's security hung precariously in the balance. Error. Content tag, content part 6, not found in response. Raw text length, 16,221 characters. The air thickening with a cloying sweetness that stung his nostrils. The bioluminescent feedback loop intensified, bathing Stella's cell in an eerie, pulsating green glow. The Gamilon's massive form was now outlined in sharp relief, every ridge and scar on her obsidian hide illuminated. But the beauty was a lie. The air density readout on the observation panel spiked a cocktail of synthesized xenogases reaching critical toxicity levels. A level that would kill a human in minutes. Kevin coughed, a dry, hacking sound that echoed in the observation room. Disorientation washed over him in a dizzying wave. He stumbled, catching himself on the edge of the console. His breath came in ragged gasps, each inhale a burning effort. His vision swam, the readouts blurring into meaningless streaks of light. He tried to focus, to access the environmental controls, but his thoughts felt thick and sluggish, like wading through mud. He had to help Stella, but he could barely help himself. Through the haze of his failing senses, he saw Stella. Despite her weakened state, he could see the subtle tremor in her massive limbs. She had shifted, positioning herself between Kevin and the source of the gas leak. Her crimson eyes, usually blazing with a fierce intensity, were now narrowed, focused on him with what he could only interpret as concern. Distressed vocalizations rumbled from her chest, a series of low, guttural clicks and croons that were markedly different from her usual roars of defiance. They sounded almost worried. He blinked, trying to clear his vision. He noticed something else, something subtle but undeniable. Stella's skin, normally a uniform shade of obsidian, was subtly shifting. Patches of deep indigo spread across her hide, pulsing faintly with the same eerie green light as the gas. The texture, too, seemed to be changing, becoming more porous, almost sponge-like. It clicked. She was absorbing the gas, attempting to filter it, a unique biological mechanism he'd only theorized about in his early research. On the observation deck's main screen, Dr. Thorne's face was a mask of grim concentration. "Miller," her voice crackled over the comms, strained but clear. "Can you confirm, is she absorbing the gas?" There was a note of something akin to awe in her voice. Acknowledgement. She was seeing it too, seeing the validity of Kevin's often dismissed theories. Before Kevin could manage a coherent response, the comms channel was overridden. Commander Thorne's voice, sharp and decisive, cut through the static. All personnel, evacuate sector Gamma immediately. Seal off observation deck 7. Prepare for full containment breach. That is a direct order. Commander, wait, Dr. Thorne protested, her voice rising in pitch. She's adapting. We can learn from this. Doctor, that's enough, Commander Thorne snapped. We cannot risk a full containment breach. The safety of the station takes priority. Seal it off. Kevin watched, helpless, as Dr. Thorne's face hardened. Her eyes narrowed with a sudden fierce drive. Her fingers flew across the console, accessing restricted command protocol. I'm sorry, Commander, she said, her voice barely a whisper, but I can't do that. With a series of rapid commands, she remotely overrode the containment cell's environmental controls. The air pressure within Stella's cell visibly dropped, the change rippling across the observation window. Simultaneously, the humidity spiked, mist swirling within the enclosure, obscuring Stella's massive form. It was a crude approximation, Kevin knew, but Thorne was trying to mimic the conditions of Gamilon Prime, the high-gravity, swamp-like environment that had shaped their physiology. The effect was immediate, though subtle. Stella's tremors lessened. The indigo patches on her skin pulsed less frantically. Her gas absorption rate, according to the flickering readouts, appeared to decrease, if only marginally. A glimmer of hope in the toxic green gloom. Then, a sound. A clear, albeit distorted, vocalization emanated from within the cell. It wasn't a roar, or a growl, or even one of the complex clicks and croons Kevin had begun to decipher. It was something else. Something that sent a shiver down his spine. A primal recognition that bypassed his failing cognitive functions. Vin, Stella. She was trying to say his name. Suddenly, a new alert flashed across the console. A detailed analysis of the synthesized gas, flagged with the highest security clearance. The report scrolled rapidly, revealing a terrifying truth. The gas possessed unintentional mutagenic properties, causing rapid cellular alteration in specific biological structures. It was rewriting DNA, specifically Gamilon DNA. A secondary data log, buried deep within the analysis, revealed the horrifying truth. The synthesized gas wasn't intended as a simple containment measure. It was designed for weaponization, species-specific targeting. A weapon designed to eradicate Gamilons by exploiting their unique biological vulnerabilities. On the screen, Dr. Thorne's face crumpled. "Oh, God," she whispered, her voice thick with horror. "What have I done?" Regret etched deep lines into her face. She looked up, her eyes meeting Kevin's through the observation window. I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know. But I'll fix it. I have to." Commander Thorne's voice, colder than ice, cut through the silence. "Doctor, stand down. You are in violation of direct orders." "Security, prepare to." "There's a counter-agent," Dr. Thorne interrupted, her voice regaining a steely edge. "A compound that can reverse the mutagenic effects, but it requires a rare element. Xylosian blue crystal. It's stored in the restricted section. Sector Delta 9. Commander Thorne hesitated. The moral dilemma was etched on her face. Sacrifice Stella, contain the potential threat, and maintain station security? Or risk everything to save a creature the galaxy feared, potentially exposing a conspiracy that reached far beyond Station Epsilon? "Doctor," she said, her voice barely audible, What are the risks? High, Thorne admitted. Sector Delta 9 is heavily guarded, and the crystal is extremely unstable. But it's our only chance. A long silence stretched between them, broken only by the hiss of the failing life support systems. Finally, Commander Thorne spoke, her voice heavy with resignation. Authorize a retrieval mission. A small team. You will lead it, Doctor, and take Sergeant Davies with you. But understand this, if there's any sign of a containment breach, I will not hesitate. Kevin felt his knees buckle. The room spun. His vision tunneled, the image of Stella's glowing form fading in and out of focus. The gas was winning. He was losing consciousness. He had to warn them about the weapon. His thoughts dissolved into a swirling vortex of green and indigo. He slumped against the console, his body limp, his consciousness fading. Stella. He could feel her presence, a powerful, alien warmth radiating through the plasteel. He was failing her. Then, darkness. Just as his vision faded completely, a blinding flash of light erupted from within Stella's cell. A powerful bioluminescent pulse, far stronger than anything he had witnessed before, flooded the enclosure with intense emerald light. The gas shimmered, reacting to the energy in an unknown, unpredictable way. What would happen next? He couldn't know. The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor was the first sign. A subtle shift from the erratic, panicked rhythm of moments ago to something steadier. Kevin's chest rose and fell with a slightly deeper cadence, the oxygen saturation edging upwards, a fragile green number clinging to the edge of acceptable. He remained unconscious, his face pale beneath the tangle of sensor wires, but the frantic edge had softened, replaced by a fragile equilibrium. Across the observation deck, Stella lay slumped against the plasteel wall of her enclosure. The intricate patterns of bioluminescence that usually pulsed across her hide were now faint, flickering like dying embers. Her breathing was shallow, ragged, each exhale a visible tremor that shook her massive frame. Exhaustion clung to her like a shroud, a stark contrast to the raw power she had exuded only moments before. Impossible, Dr. Thorne thought, her gaze darting between Kevin's monitors and Stella's slumped form. The mutagenic gas should have been irreversible, its effects immediate and catastrophic. Yet the readings, they defied all logic. Could it be? The pulse? Jax, prep the transport. We're going in, Thorne said, her voice tight with a newfound urgency. She grabbed a secure holding cell, its interior lined with static suppressors. Jax, ever composed, simply affirmed, her hand already resting on the carbine strapped to her back. Acknowledged, Doctor. ETA to the restricted section. 5 minutes. A detailed map of the facility shimmered on Jax's wrist-mounted display, highlighting the path to their objective. The restricted section was a labyrinth of reinforced corridors and automated defenses, a testament to the dangerous research conducted within. Laser grids crisscrossed hallways, their crimson beams slicing through the air. Pressure-sensitive plates lay hidden beneath the durasteel flooring, ready to trigger alarms and automated turrets. The air hummed with latent energy, a silent warning to any unauthorized intruders. Jax moved with a fluid grace, her eyes constantly scanning for threats. Doctor, stay close. This section is locked down tighter than a Qatarian's purse. She pulled a small device from her belt, its multifaceted lens glinting in the dim light. With practiced ease, she manipulated the device, bypassing the first laser grid in a matter of seconds. Old tech, predictable pattern, child's play. Deeper inside, Thorne accessed a hidden terminal, its interface archaic and clunky. Lines of code scrolled across the screen as she searched for the data she needed. Finally, a file appeared. Project Nightingale initial parameters. Her breath hitched as she read the opening lines. The gas, initially designated VX-99, wasn't designed as a weapon at all. It was intended for pacification, a means of calming aggressive alien species during first contact scenarios. The next entry sent a chill down her spine. A subfile, labeled Deviation Protocol, detailed how a rogue faction within the research organization had secretly altered the gas's formula, weaponizing it for species-specific targeting. Their motives remained unclear, but the implications were terrifying. Commander Thorne's voice crackled over the comms. "Doctor, report. What have you found?" "Commander, the gas. It wasn't meant to be a weapon. Someone altered the formula. I'm sending you the data log now." A beat of silence then. "Understood. I'm initiating an internal inquiry. Find that counter-agent, Doctor. And be careful." A sharp click echoed through the corridor. Jax cursed under her breath. Pressure plate. Lockdown initiated. Red lights flashed, and a klaxon blared, shattering the silence. Automated security active. Sensors seeking targets now. Jax moved quickly, going before Thorne and sending blaster rifle shots ahead. Energy bolts ricocheted off the turret's armored casings, but one grazed Jax's arm. She grunted, but didn't falter, continuing to lay down suppressing fire. "Go, Doctor. I'll cover you." Meanwhile, in the med bay, Kevin Miller dreamt. He was a child again, small and awkward, standing in a dusty barnyard. A snarling dog, all teeth and fury, was cornering a group of terrified chickens. Everyone else recoiled in fear. But Kevin, he saw something different. He saw the dog's fear, its pain, its desperate need for connection. He approached slowly, cautiously, offering a gentle hand. The dog hesitated, then licked his fingers. Another flash, a wounded bird, its wing broken, lying helpless in the grass. Other children threw stones, but Kevin carefully splinted the wing, nursing it back to health. The dreams were fragmented, disjointed, but they painted a clear picture, a lifelong connection with animals, a unique ability to see beyond the surface, to understand their fear and pain. The early development of an empathy so profound it bordered on intuition. Stella, still slumped against the wall, stirred. Despite her weakened state, a faint pulse of bioenergy emanated from her, a subtle warmth that enveloped Kevin's body. It was a desperate attempt to transfer some of her remaining energy, to further stabilize his faltering condition. "He doesn't deserve this," Dr. Thorne thought, her face etched with remorse as she watched Jax fight off the turrets. "I was so quick to dismiss him, to underestimate his abilities. He saw something in that creature that I couldn't or wouldn't see." "Element storage vault, dead ahead," Jax announced, her voice strained. They reached a massive steel door, its surface smooth and seamless. "Biolock," Thorne said, her voice tight. "Requires Gamelin DNA." A seemingly insurmountable obstacle. Then a realization dawned, a spark of hope in the face of despair. Stella's pulse. It altered Kevin's cells, however slightly. It's a long shot, but... She pulled a sterile syringe from her kit and drew a sample of Kevin's blood. Her hands trembled as she approached the biolock panel. This was insane. It could kill him. It could unleash something unimaginable. But she was out of options. With a deep breath, she inserted the syringe into the biolock interface. The panel glowed, scanned the sample, then clicked. The vault door hissed open, revealing rows of shimmering vials, each containing a different rare element. But as the door slid aside, a hidden security protocol activated. A low hum filled the air, and a series of energy shields snapped into place, sealing off the vault. The klaxon wailed, a piercing shriek that echoed through the vault. Red emergency lights strobed, painting the sterile corridors in a hellish crimson glow. Automated lockdown sequence initiated. A synthesized voice announced, devoid of emotion. Restricted section sealing in T-3 minutes. Heavy blast doors, reinforced plasteel slabs a meter thick, began to slide shut with a grinding groan that vibrated through the deck plates. Sparks showered from the overhead conduits as the ancient mechanisms strained. "Thorn, we need to move," Jax shouted, her voice tight with urgency. "This section has minimal life support. Get sealed in here. And we're looking at complete isolation. No comms, no rescue." Thorn, already working with practiced efficiency, detached a small cylindrical container from the element's housing. The container hummed softly, its internal stabilizers fighting to contain the volatile energy within. He clipped it securely to his belt. "Got it." "Lead the way." Jax consulted her wrist-mounted datapad, her fingers flying across the screen. "Nearest evacuation point is through maintenance tunnel Gamma 7. It's a tight squeeze, but it's our best shot." They sprinted down the corridor, the closing blast doors a relentless pursuer. The air grew thick with the metallic tang of ozone. They reached the entrance to the tunnel just as the first door slammed shut behind them, the impact shaking the entire structure. The maintenance tunnel was a claustrophobic nightmare. Conduits snaked across the low ceiling, and the air hung thick with dust and the musty smell of disuse. "Collapsed section ahead," Jax warned, her voice echoing in the narrow space. "Gonna have to squeeze through." A section of the tunnel had indeed collapsed, a jumble of twisted metal and broken concrete blocking their path. A narrow opening, barely wide enough to crawl through, remained. Meanwhile, back in the med bay, Kevin Miller's body twitched subtly. His eyelids fluttered, and a faint tremor ran through his hand. The biomonitor beside his bed registered a slight increase in brain activity, a flicker of subconscious recognition. In the containment cell, Stella strained against her restraints, her bioluminescent hide flickering erratically. The energy transfer to Kevin was becoming increasingly difficult, her weakened state making it harder to maintain the connection. Her guttural growls were permeated with a new note of desperation. "Damn it," Thorn muttered, his voice tight with frustration. He examined the instruments in the abandoned lab. Dust coated every surface, and the air smelled of stale chemicals and decay. Makeshift wiring snaked across the floor, connecting cobbled-together devices. No counteragent synthesizer. "Looks like our rogue scientists weren't expecting to need one." He ran a diagnostic on the equipment. "I can convert this old spectrograph, but it's going to take time. And we're missing a critical component, a phase modulator." Jax swept her light across the room, illuminating a series of crude diagrams, scrawled on a nearby wall. "Looks like they were running some pretty unsanctioned experiments in here. Neural interfaces, bioweaponry. Lovely." Thorn accessed a damaged data terminal, managing to recover a fragmented file. "Got something. Partial manifest, research notes. These guys weren't just renegades. They were planning something big." Something about controlling alien species through targeted biological warfare. A chunk of concrete dislodged from the ceiling, striking Jax in the leg. She cried out, clutching her thigh. "Damn it! I think it's broken." Thorn knelt beside her, quickly assessing the injury. "It's bad. We need to get you stable, but we don't have time. The doors will seal completely soon." He hesitated, his face etched with conflict. "I can't carry you and synthesize the counter-agent." "Jax, Kevin gasped, his eyes snapping open. He sat bolt upright in the bed, his heart pounding in his chest. A flash of violet light seared his vision, a glimpse of Stella's home world, a landscape of towering rock formations and swirling purple skies. Then, a wave of overwhelming dread washed over him, a sense of imminent danger. A faint, almost imperceptible whisper echoed in his mind. Gamilons. Danger. It was Stella, her telepathic signal weak and fragmented, but clear enough to convey the urgency of her warning. The rogue faction planned to weaponize Gamilons. Thorn cursed under his breath. The spectrograph needs a stable power source, and the station's grid is about to go offline in this section. I could reroute power from life support, but that would give us minutes, not hours. He looked at Stella's containment cell, visible through a reinforced window in the lab. Unless... He paused, his eyes narrowing. "Unless we use her." Jax looked at him, her face pale with pain. "Use her? Thorn, what are you talking about?" "Her bioluminescence," Thorn explained, his voice tight with desperation. "It's a powerful energy source. We could tap into it, use it to power the spectrograph. It's risky, it could weaken her further, but it's our only chance." Jax gritted her teeth, her hand tightening on her injured leg. "Do it, Thorn, do it. Don't worry about me. Just stop them." The rare element samples stored in its containment unit began to flicker erratically. The internal stabilizers were failing. The window of opportunity was closing fast. As Thorn prepared to initiate the synthesis process, a figure emerged from the shadows at the far end of the lab. The figure wore a Station Epsilon uniform, but their face was obscured by the low light and a high collar. In their hand, they held a weapon aimed directly at Thorn. The data fragment shimmered on the console, a ghostly echo of forbidden knowledge. Before Thorn could fully process the implications weaponization, Gamilons, a figure, erupted from the shadows between the inactive cryo-storage units. The attack was a whirlwind of brutal efficiency. A fist, rock-hard, slammed into Thorn's jaw, sending him staggering back against a bank of flickering monitors. He tasted blood, the metallic tang sharp in his mouth. Years of Federation training kicked in, adrenaline surging. Despite the pain lancing through her shoulder, Jax reacted instantly. She hurled a discarded power cell at the attacker, a desperate move that bought Thorn a precious second. The cell struck the figure's arm, momentarily disrupting their attack, creating a small window for Thorn to regain his footing. Her security training, honed through countless simulations, screamed at her to create space, to disengage and reassess. But Thorn was too close, too vulnerable. Thorn, recovering, pivoted, using the momentum to deliver a sharp kick to the attacker's knee. The figure grunted, stumbling. Seizing the opportunity, Thorn grabbed the attacker's wrist, twisting with practiced precision. A muffled crack echoed in the confined space as the weapon clattered to the floor. It was a standard Station Epsilon sidearm, but modified a crude silencer attached to the barrel, and the energy cell housing bore telltale signs of tampering. Specialized ammunition. Before Thorne could react, the figure dropped a small metallic sphere. A hiss, and the lab was instantly filled with a thick, acrid smoke. Visibility dropped to near zero. Thorne coughed, his eyes burning. He reached for Jax, his hand finding her arm. "Get out," he rasped. The figure, shrouded in the smoke, moved with uncanny speed, weaving through the abandoned equipment. Thorne lunged, but his hand closed on empty air. A side exit slammed open, then shut, cutting off the sound of fleeing footsteps. As the smoke began to dissipate, Thorne activated his helmet's internal light. Jax coughed beside him, clutching her injured shoulder. "Damn it," Thorne muttered, his gaze sweeping the lab. He caught a glimpse of something on the fleeing figure, a flash of silver on their collar, partially obscured by the smoke and the high collar of their uniform. A metal badge. Officer Grade 2. Sector Echo Patrol. "We haven't the time," Jack said, her voice tight. "That subject. It's degrading fast." Thorne nodded, the implications of the attack settling heavily on him. Someone within Station Epsilon wanted to stop them, and they were running out of time. He activated his comm. "Thorne to security. Report an incident in Sector Gamma 9. Initiate containment procedures." He ended the call. "Help me find something to replace that regulator," he said to Jax, already moving deeper into the abandoned lab, his light cutting through the gloom. Anything. Meanwhile, in the station's data storage sector, Kevin's fingers danced across the console, his heart hammering against his ribs. Stella's warning. They hide the truth. Weaponize. Danger echoed in his mind. He needed to know what the Federation was hiding about Gamilons, about Xeno-weaponization project. He bypassed the first security firewall with surprising ease. Stella's intuitive guidance a whisper in his mind. He was about to access the restricted files when a red alert flashed across the screen. Unauthorized access detected. Sector lockdown initiated. A klaxon blared, its shrill cry echoing through the sterile corridors. "Damn it!" Kevin swore under his breath. He was trapped. Left. Override. Sequence. Delta 7. Stella's thought brushed against his mind. A fleeting image of a keypad, with a specific sequence highlighted. Kevin hesitated, then followed Stella's instructions, his fingers flying across the keypad. He input the sequence, Delta 7, Echo 9, Alpha 2, Foxtrot 4. A panel on the wall slid open, revealing a hidden maintenance conduit. Back in the abandoned lab, Thorne unearthed a dusty crate filled with discarded components. "This might work," he muttered, pulling out a device that vaguely resembled the missing regulator. Old bioluminescence amplifier, used in early xeno-communication experiments. "Can you make it work?" Jax asked. Wincing as she adjusted her makeshift bandage, Thorne examined the device, his brow furrowed. "It's a long shot. It's designed to amplify light, not regulate energy flow. But maybe with some modifications." A warning chime sounded from the console. "Élément dégradation criticale," Jax reported, her voice tight. "Radiation levels are spiking. We're down to minutes." Just then, a station-wide alarm blared, different from the lockdown siren. "Security breach detected. Sector Alpha 3. All personnel report to designated stations." "What the hell is going on?" Thorne muttered, his gaze hardening. "It's connected," Jax said, her eyes narrowed. "The shadowy figure, the data fragment, this new breach. It's a coordinated attack. Someone's trying to stop us, and they're throwing everything they have at it. Thorn nodded grimly. Then we don't have time to play it safe. He grabbed the bioluminescence amplifier. I'm going to try to overload this thing. It's risky, but it's our only chance. In the data storage sector, Kevin scrambled through the maintenance conduit, Stella's guidance leading him through a maze of twisting tunnels. He could hear the firm steps drawing near now. Time was running short. Quickly the passage led to a small supply room. He came out, eyes adjusting to light, and saw two guards ahead, hands raised. "Halt," one called out. "No entry allowed. You are in violation of Federation security protocols." "I can explain," Kevin said, his voice trembling slightly. "There's a rogue faction within Station Epsilon. They're planning to weaponize Gamilons. I have proof." The officers exchanged skeptical glances. "Step away from the console and put your hands behind your head," the first officer ordered. "Your claims are delusional, Miller." A wave of calm washed over Kevin, a soothing presence that momentarily disrupted the officer's focus. It was Stella, projecting her calming energy through the station, a subtle influence that lessened their immediate aggression. Back in the abandoned lab, Thorn worked feverishly, rerouting circuits and bypassing safety protocols on the bioluminescence amplifier. Sparks flew as he forced connections that weren't meant to be made. The device hummed, then vibrated, then began to emit a high-pitched whine. "It's overloading," Jax warned, her voice tight. "You need to stop." Thorn ignored her, his eyes fixed on the rapidly degrading element sample. Almost there. He pushed Jax behind a reinforced containment wall. "Get behind cover!" "Thorn, what are you doing?" Jax yelled. Using a hijacked comm channel, Kevin's voice, desperate, cut through the station's comms. "Commander Thorn, this is Kevin Miller. I know this sounds crazy, but you have to listen to me. Stella is not a weapon. A group wants to use her. You must check Area Gamma 9. Please, you have to trust me." The bioluminescence amplifier sputtered, then exploded in a blinding flash of light, engulfing the lab in a surge of uncontrolled energy. The ringing in Jax's ears was a shrill counterpoint to the low groan emanating from Thorn. Dust motes danced in the emergency lights, painting the scene in a sickly orange hue. Thorn lay sprawled amidst twisted metal, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Jax knelt beside him, hands trembling as she checked for a pulse. It was weak, thready. A subtle shift permeated the air, a lessening of the frantic energy that had gripped the station since the explosion. It was almost imperceptible, like a calming hand laid gently over a fevered brow. But the security officers who swarmed into the corridor, weapons raised, remained focused on one thing. Kevin Miller, standing amidst the wreckage, seemingly unharmed. Commander Thorn's face was a mask of conflicting emotions, relief that Jax was alive, concern for her brother, and the unyielding commitment to maintain order. "Miller, you're under arrest," she stated, her voice tight. "Take him into custody. Secure holding cell Beta." She turned to a subordinate. "Lieutenant Park, I want a full internal investigation into this incident. Seal off Sector Gamma. No one in or out until I say so." A private order, barely a whisper. "And Park, look into any unusual activity from Section 7 in the last few weeks, discreetly." Park nodded, understanding the unspoken directive. The security breach in Sector Delta, it was becoming clear, hadn't been a random act of sabotage. It was too well timed, too perfectly executed, a diversion. Later, in the sterile confines of the security office, Jax reviewed the preliminary reports. "They got what they came for," she muttered, her voice hoarse. "Research data on Gamilon's psionic potential. Everything Section 7 had compiled on Stella. Her abilities, her mind." The thought sent a shiver down her spine. A medical officer approached, his expression grave. "Commander Thorne is stable, but his injuries are critical. He needs immediate surgery. We're prepping him now." Jax's fists tight. She wanted to be there, by his side, but she knew what Thorne would want her to do. Tell him I'll finish this," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I'll expose them, I swear it." Back in the makeshift lab, Jax examined the remains of the element sample. The blast hastened its decline, making it nearly non-reactive, ineffective. She hit the table hard, the metal creaking from the force. Getting one more sample, it was a lost cause. The storage facility was a fortress, shielded, guarded, and deep within the station's core. But without it, they were dead in the water. She needed Stella. Meanwhile, in holding cell Beta, Kevin sat on the edge of the cot, his expression resolute. The interrogation had been intense. Accusations, threats, promises, but he hadn't wavered. "I'll cooperate," he'd said, his voice calm but firm, "when I have a guarantee of Stella's safety. Until then, I have nothing to say." He could feel it, a subtle shift in the air, a ripple of something. Stella. She was trying to reach him, and she wasn't just trying to comfort him. There was a warning, a sense of impending danger, a new threat coalescing within the station's walls. It wasn't connected to the rogue faction, not directly. It was personal. The nutrient paste arrived, a bland gray sludge. Kevin eyed it with suspicion. It looked off. He didn't need Stella's telepathic nudge to know something was wrong. Someone was trying to poison him. The realization hit him like a physical blow. It wasn't just about silencing him. It was about revenge. A memory flickered, a dimly lit lab, a Gamilon strapped to a table, needles, pain, the neural inhibitors, the experiments. Section 7. He wasn't just a nuisance. He was a threat to someone's past. Jax, desperate, contacted Commander Thorne. "I need access to Stella," she pleaded, her voice tight with urgency. "The element, it's gone. I need her to find another sample. It's the only way." Thorne hesitated. "Miller is still a suspect. I can't." "He's innocent," Jax insisted. "And Stella, she's the key. I know it." A long silence. Then a weary sigh. "Limited access, under heavy guard. Don't push it, Lieutenant." In the observation room, Jax stood before Stella's containment cell, her heart pounding. "Stella," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Can you hear me?" Stella turned her massive head, her crimson eyes focusing on Jax. A series of low, guttural sounds rumbled from her chest, a complex melody that seemed to bypass Jax's ears and resonate directly in her mind. Images flooded her consciousness, a swirling vortex of energy, a complex lattice of psionic pathways, and a single crystalline structure at the center, the element. "It's not just a power source," Jax realized, her voice trembling. "It's a catalyst for unlocking Gamilon's psionic abilities, for controlling them, weaponizing Gamilons for galactic domination." The rogue faction's goal was terrifying in its scope. "We have to stop them," Jax said, her voice filled with commitment. "We need that element." "Can you help me find it?" Stella tilted her head, a gesture that seemed almost thoughtful. Then she emitted a series of clicks and whistles, a complex set of instructions. Meanwhile, in holding cell beta, Kevin focused his mind, reaching out to Stella. He could sense her, feel her presence, a warm, comforting energy that surrounded him, a subtle weakness in the security protocols, a blind spot in the surveillance system, a forgotten maintenance hatch. He slipped through the shadows, moving with a newfound confidence. Guided by Stella's telepathic whispers, he was breaking out. On the bridge, Commander Thorne received a priority alert. Security breach in holding cell beta. Subject Miller has escaped. She closed her eyes, a wave of weariness washing over her. Issue a station-wide order, she said, her voice flat. Apprehend Miller, dead or alive. The security forces were closing in. Kevin scrambled through the narrow ventilation shaft, the metal grating digging into his elbows and knees. Dust billowed with every movement, coating his skin in a gritty film. He risked a glance back. The beam of a security flashlight sliced through the gloom, getting closer. This way, a voice echoed in his mind. Not spoken, but felt. It was Stella, a subtle pressure against his thoughts, a feeling of rightness guiding him forward. He'd never experienced anything like it before. This telepathic link. It was faint, fragile, but undeniably there. He followed the sensation, ignoring the station's schematic he'd memorized, trusting Stella's alien intuition. The ventilation shaft twisted and turned, leading him away from the main corridors. Finally, Stella's guidance sharpened. He reached a section of the shaft that looked like any other, but a faint vibration resonated beneath his palm. Press there, Stella's thought voice urged. Kevin hesitated, then pressed. A section of the wall hissed open, revealing a hidden maintenance access point, a narrow crawl space he hadn't known existed. He slipped inside. The panel's ceiling shut behind him, plunging him into near darkness. Meanwhile, in the depot, Jax held her pulse weapon, the device humming with stored energy. Team, status report. Entering perimeter now, leader. A clear voice echoed over the corn. Minimal resistance so far, but Jax felt a knot of unease tighten in her stomach. Thorne's warning, though garbled, echoed in her mind. Traitor, your midst. She pushed the thought aside, focusing on the mission. Suddenly the lights flickered and died, plunging the storage facility into darkness. Alarms blared, emergency lights sputtering to life, casting long, dancing shadows. What the hell was that? Jax barked. Then a voice tinged with fear came over the comm. Commander, energy surge detected, origin point, the element sample. In the darkness, Stella's voice resonated in Kevin's mind, stronger now. The element. It resonates with me. My psionic abilities. It is unstable. I can stabilize it, but it is dangerous. Kevin swallowed hard, the implications sinking in. Stella wasn't just a beast. She was something far more complex, something the Federation clearly didn't understand. He needed to warn Jax, but how? He was trapped, hunted. Then he heard voices muffled by the ventilation shaft walls. Facility breach imminent. Secure all sectors. Suspect Miller is aiding the Gamelon sympathizers. Authorized lethal force. Kevin recognized the voice's security officers, discussing Jax's plan, revealing the facility's weak points. He had to get to her. Then, another voice, closer this time. A familiar voice that sent a chill down his spine. He's a danger to us all. Sympathizing with that thing. I won't let him compromise the station. A low-ranking scientist, Davies, his face etched with bitterness, peered into the ventilation shaft. A makeshift energy pistol clutched in his trembling hand. Davies. Kevin remembered him. Davies had lost his sister in a Gamelon raid years ago before first contact. "You're making a mistake, Davies," Kevin said, his voice echoing in the narrow space. "Amista genomiller. I'm saving this station. You're endangering it with your sympathy." Davies's voice was imbued with venom. "Gamelons are monsters, and you're helping them." Kevin knew he couldn't reason with him. He had to buy Jax some time. He reached for a loose panel in the ventilation shaft wall. A panel he knew led to a rarely used maintenance corridor in a remote sector of the station. He ripped it free, triggering a cascade of sparks and a small, controlled explosion. The lights flickered again, alarms blared louder, and a section of the station went dark. "What was that?" Davies shouted, momentarily distracted. "A diversion," Kevin muttered, scrambling further into the ventilation system. Outside, the storage facility doors shuddered and strained under Jax's attack. Energy weapon fire pierced the metal, creating rough openings. "Entry underway," Jax yelled, leading her team inside. But Stella's voice, urgent, filled Kevin's mind. "Danger! Near you! The poisoner! He comes!" Kevin froze. Davies was still out there hunting him. He was trapped, a sitting duck. He pressed himself against the ventilation shaft wall, listening. The metallic clang of boots on the metal floor grew louder. Davies was close. "I'm trying to save you, Miller," Davies' voice echoed, closer now, distorted by the ventilation shaft. "You just don't see it yet." Kevin rounded a bend in the shaft, finding himself face to face with Davies. The scientist's eyes were wild, his face contorted with hatred. He raised the energy pistol, the barrel glowing with lethal energy. "It's over, Miller," Davies hissed. "It doesn't have to be," Kevin pleaded, holding up his hands. "Just listen to me." Davies lunged, swinging the energy pistol like a club. Kevin ducked, the weapon whistling past his ear. He scrambled backward, desperate to create some distance in the cramped space. The fight was brutal, desperate. Kevin, unarmed, relied on his agility and knowledge of the ventilation system to evade Davies's attack. He managed to disarm the scientist, the energy pistol clattering to the floor. But Davies was relentless, his grief and hatred fueling his rage. Meanwhile, inside the storage facility, Jax and her team advanced cautiously, weapons raised. Clear, clear. The facility seemed deserted, too quiet. Jax's unease grew. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, and a section of the floor exploded, sending debris flying. "Ambush!" Jax yelled, diving for cover. Laser fire ripped through the air, cutting down two of her team members. The rogue faction had anticipated their attack, setting a deadly trap. Then a voice, weak but familiar, echoed over Jax's comm. It was Thorn. "Jax, traitor. Your team." The signal died, leaving Jax with a chilling realization. Back in the ventilation system, Kevin finally managed to subdue Davies, pinning him to the floor. He straddled the scientist's chest, his hands gripping Davies's wrists. "It's over, Davies," Kevin said, his voice strained. "Just stop." He could feel the scientist's anger, his grief, his desperation. But he couldn't hurt him. Not really. He wasn't like that. Stella's voice lingered. "The depot by the warehouse. You can assist Jax." Kevin looked down at Davies, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. He couldn't leave him here, but he had to help Jax. He made a decision. He pulled out his comm, activating the emergency channel. Security breach in Sector Gamma. Scientist Davies apprehended. Request immediate assistance. Then he scrambled out of the ventilation shaft, following Stella's guidance, towards the critical system override terminal. Inside the storage facility, chaos reigned. Jax, pinned down behind an overturned crate, returned fire, taking down one of the rogue faction agents. But they were outnumbered, outgunned. Then, a pulse rifle blast ripped through the air, hitting Jax in the shoulder. She cried out in pain, collapsing to the floor. "Commander down," one of her remaining team members yelled, before being cut down by a hail of laser fire. Jax was alone, surrounded, facing imminent capture or death. Then, one of her own officers, Miller, unrelated to Kevin, raised his weapon at her. "Sorry, Commander," Miller said, his voice flat. "Orders are orders." He fired. Stella's voice, clear and urgent, filled Kevin's mind. "The terminal. Now, Kevin. You must channel your empathy through the system. Stabilize the element. It is the only way." "Way." Kevin squeezed his eyes shut, ignoring the scientist's frantic warning echoing in his ears. Jax needed time. Stella's voice, a calm island in the storm of his mind, cut through the fear. "Focus, Kevin. The terminal. It is a conduit. Feel the element, its potential. Not destruction, but harmony." He pushed the scientist's words away. Destruction or creation? He had to trust Stella. He did trust Stella. Outside, the acrid smell of plasma fire stung his nostrils, even through the filtration system. The override terminal, bathed in the flickering red emergency lights, was a fortress. Two figures in black tactical gear, their faces obscured by helmets, stood guard, weapons raised. The air crackled with suppressed energy. Jax, he sent the thought out, a silent prayer for her survival. A roar, not Stella's, but a battle cry, ripped through the ventilation shaft. Then, the staccato bursts of plasma fire. Jax. He could almost taste the metallic tang of blood in the air, feel the desperate scramble for cover. "Damn it, Jax." Now, Kevin, Stella's voice was firm, unwavering. "Imagine a song, a resonance. The element. It responds to empathy. To you." He reached for the terminal, his fingers trembling. The element, it was a living thing, a chaotic symphony of raw power. But beneath the chaos, he sensed a deep loneliness, a yearning. The station's collective fear slammed into him, a tidal wave of panic, anxiety, the cold dread of impending death. He gasped, staggering back from the terminal. His head throbbed. He tasted bile. He couldn't. A searing pain erupted in his shoulder. He cried out, collapsing against the console. Through the haze he saw Jax, her face contorted in pain, throwing herself in front of her teammate, absorbing the brunt of a plasma blast. Her body convulsed, then went still. Jax. The image of Jax's sacrifice burned in his mind, a white-hot brand. He closed his eyes, focusing on that image, on her loyalty, her bravery, her humanity. And then, a flicker, a vision. He was standing on a barren, wind-swept planet, beneath a sky choked with swirling crimson dust. Before him, a colossal structure, shimmering with an ethereal light, pulsed with energy. It was a cradle, a birthing chamber. The element. It wasn't a weapon. It was a seed, a fragment of creation. The vision shattered. A cold voice echoed in his ear. Foolish, sentimental human. He blinked. The scientist, He was gone. The restraints lay discarded on the floor. "Kevin!" Stella's voice, urgent, desperate, pulled him back. "Focus, you are losing it." He took a deep, shuddering breath. Jax, her sacrifice, it couldn't be in vain. He reached for the terminal again, his hand steady now. He focused on the vision, on the seed, on the potential for life. He poured his empathy into the system, a torrent of raw emotion, tempered by hope. A wave of energy surged through him, lifting him off his feet. The terminal hummed, then roared. A visible barrier, shimmering with iridescent light, sprang into existence around the containment unit, encasing the element in a cage of pure psionic energy. The chaotic energy within subsided, replaced by a gentle rhythmic pulse. Outside, the rogue faction agents staggered, clutching their heads. The air crackled with uncontrolled energy. Jax's teammate, momentarily freed from the barrage, scrambled for cover, firing wildly. Then darkness. Kevin slumped forward, collapsing onto the terminal, his body limp. "Kevin!" Stella's telepathic cry was permeated with panic. "Jax! He needs you. Find him." Somewhere in the chaos, Jax, wounded and bleeding, heard the desperate plea. "Stella, what the hell is going on?" But Stella had no time to explain. "Kevin, he is fading. You must find him. Please." Jax gritted her teeth, ignoring the pain searing through her body. She had a job to do. But Kevin, he'd risked everything. He'd shown her something she hadn't felt in a long time. "Damn it," she muttered, pushing herself to her feet. "All right, you overgrown space lizard. I'm coming." The remaining rogue faction agents, unnerved by the sudden surge of energy and the eerie glow emanating from the containment unit, exchanged uneasy glances. This wasn't worth it. Not anymore. They turned and fled, disappearing into the labyrinthine corridors of the station. Jax, guided by Stella's faint telepathic whispers, stumbled through the smoke-filled corridor, her weapon raised. She found him slumped over the terminal, his body radiating a faint, ethereal glow. He was unconscious, his face pale. "Help him, Jax, please. I will explain everything later. Just save him." Jax stared at Kevin's lifeless form, then back at the containment unit, at the shimmering psionic field that held the element in check. Could she trust Stella? Could she trust any of this? But one thing was clear. Kevin's life. It hung in the balance, and somehow that mattered. Jax's fingers pressed against the side of Kevin's neck, searching for a pulse that flickered like a dying star. His skin was clammy, a sheen of cold sweat clinging to his brow. His psionic aura, usually a steady hum she could feel even through her glove, pulsed erratically, a chaotic storm threatening to tear itself apart. "He's fading fast." Medical Bay. Sector 4, Sub-Level 7. Lower security clearance. Now Stella's voice sliced through the chaos in Jax's mind, sharp and insistent. Jax hesitated, glancing back at the Gamelon's containment cell. The plasteel shimmered, distorting Stella's massive form. Could she trust her? Every instinct screamed against it, but Kevin was dying. And Stella was the only one offering a solution, a path, however treacherous. With a grunt, Jax hoisted Kevin higher in her arms, adjusting his weight against her armored chest. He was heavier than he looked, his limp form a dead weight. Sector 4, Sub-Level 7, Lower Security. It was a gamble, but one she had to take. She moved quickly, her boots echoing softly in the deserted corridor. The station felt wrong. Too quiet, too empty. Where were the patrols? She navigated through a maze of identical hallways, her internal compass guided by Stella's unwavering mental beacon. Then, a faint hiss, almost imperceptible, the life support system cycling down, a subtle shift in the air, a metallic tang on her tongue, and a creeping lightness. The corridor shimmered. The grey walls seemed to breathe, twisting into grotesque faces. A low, guttural laughter echoed in her ears. Not Stella's, but something darker, more sinister. The poisoner. Don't trust her, Jax. She's lying. She wants you dead. The voice, distorted and mocking, slithered into her mind. Jax stumbled, nearly dropping Kevin. Her vision blurred. Was this real, or was it a trick? Focus, Jax. Focus on your senses. The cold metal of your armor. The weight of Kevin in your arms. My voice. These are real. The rest is illusion. Stella's voice, a lifeline in the swirling chaos, cut through the hallucinations. Jax squeezed her eyes shut, focusing on the feel of the cold plasteel beneath her boots, the rasp of Kevin's breathing, the unwavering presence of Stella in her mind. The grotesque faces on the walls flickered, then vanished, but the likeness remained, a creeping unease that gnawed at her sanity. She reached the medical bay, a cramped utilitarian space, tucked away in a forgotten corner of the station. Emergency lights flickered, casting long distorted shadows. A single bio bed, scarred and worn, dominated the room. A med scanner lay discarded on the floor, its screen cracked and useless. It was sparsely equipped, barely functional, but it was something. Jax gently laid Kevin on the bio bed, her heart sinking as she saw his pallid complexion. She fumbled with the archaic medical equipment, her fingers clumsy and unfamiliar. She knew combat, not medicine. She could break bones, not mend them. Attach the neural interface to his temples. Set the frequency modulator to 4.7. Increase the psionic dampener to 60%. Stella's instructions, precise and unwavering, filled her mind. Quickly, Jax. There isn't much time. Jax hesitated. How did Stella know this? What was she? But Kevin's shallow breaths were all the answer she needed. She followed Stella's instructions, her fingers flying across the unfamiliar controls. The neural interface hummed to life, bathing Kevin's face in a soft blue light. A metallic clang echoed from the corridor. Footsteps, heavy and purposeful, approaching fast. They're here, Jax. Sector 4 security. 3 of them, armed. Stella's warning was a jolt of ice in her vein. Jax cursed under her breath. She wasn't a medic. She was a fighter, and fighters persevered. She took an energy device from a nearby table, its light blinking softly. It was a basic tool, but it was all she had. The door hissed open, revealing 3 figures clad in black armor, their weapons raised and ready. Rogue faction. Their faces were hidden behind opaque visors, their intentions clear. Secure the asset, one of them barked, his voice distorted by a vocoder. Eliminate the traitor. Jax didn't hesitate. She lunged forward, firing the surgical laser. The beam flickered, narrowly missing one of the agents. They returned fire, plasma bolts searing through the air. Jax ducked behind the bio bed, using it as cover. The surgical laser was useless at this range. She needed a distraction. Suddenly, a surge of energy erupted from Kevin's body, a wave of raw psionic power that slammed into the rogue faction agents. They staggered back, clutching their heads, their weapons clattering to the floor. Jax didn't waste the opportunity. She grabbed Kevin, slinging him over her shoulder, and bolted for the door. The rogue faction agents were recovering, shaking off the effects of Kevin's psionic discharge. They raised their weapons, firing wildly. Jax sprinted down the corridor, plasma bolts whizzing past her head. The station was a maze, a labyrinth of identical hallways. She didn't know where she was going, but she knew she had to get out. He is the key, Jax. The key to controlling the element. His empathy, it's a conduit. They want to weaponize him. Stella's voice, urgent and insistent, echoed in her mind. Jax stumbled, her mind turning. Kevin? A weapon? The element? What was Stella talking about? She reached a dead end, a blank wall with no escape. The rogue faction agents were closing in, their footsteps echoing ominously. Trust me, Jax. There is a way out, but you have to trust me completely. A leap of faith. Cornered at the dead end, the rogue faction agents closing in, Jax's expression resolute. Damn it, she muttered, her hand instinctively reaching for her sidearm. I'm out of options. She glanced at Stella, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her face. All right, beast, I'm trusting you. Lead the way. Stella tilted her massive head, a soft rumble emanating from her chest. She moved towards what appeared to be a solid section of the corridor wall, running a clawed hand along the smooth plasteel. With a barely audible click, a section of the wall shimmered and dissolved, revealing a narrow, dimly lit passage. This way, Jax said, nodding to Kevin. Move. No sooner had they entered the passage than the wall behind them slammed shut. A moment later, the sounds of heavy weaponry echoed from the other side as the rogue faction agents breached the dead end. They're through, Jax yelled, urging Kevin forward. The passage twisted and turned, the air growing thick with the scent of ozone and something else, something ancient. The passage opened abruptly into a vast chamber, its walls lined with strange symbols that pulsed with a faint internal light. In the center of the chamber floated a crystalline structure, the element, radiating waves of palpable energy. The air crackled with power, making the hairs on Kevin's arms stand on end. Suddenly, Stella shuddered, her massive form shimmering and distorting. A blinding light erupted from her, forcing Jax and Kevin to shield their eyes. When the light subsided, Stella was gone. In her place floated a being of pure energy, a swirling vortex of light and color. Her voice, now clear and resonant, echoed through the chamber. I am Stella, or what you perceived as Stella. My mission is to find a compatible host for the element, one who can wield its power for the good of the galaxy. She turned her ethereal gaze towards Kevin. Your empathy, your capacity for understanding and compassion makes you the ideal candidate. You are uniquely suited to control its power, to prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. Before Kevin could respond, a figure emerged from the shadows, a blaster pistol held firmly in his hand. It was Dr. Aris Thorne. Impressive, isn't it? He sneered, his eyes gleaming with manic intensity. But you're too late. I've come too far to be stopped by sentimentality. He raised the pistol, revealing a complex device attached to its barrel. This will extract the element's power, and I will use it to bring order to this chaotic galaxy. Thorne activated the device. It whirred and pulsed, drawing energy from the element. But the element's power was too great. The device began to overload, sparks flying as the chamber shook violently. No! Thorne screamed, his face contorted with rage and desperation. It's not supposed to do this. Kevin, you have to do something. Jax yelled over the din, firing at Thorne to keep him away from the controls. Stella's voice echoed in Kevin's mind. Connect with the element, Kevin. Feel its energy, its potential. Use your empathy to stabilize it. Closing his eyes, Kevin reached out with his mind, focusing on the chaotic energy swirling around him. He felt the element's raw power, its immense potential, but also its fear, its confusion. He poured his own empathy into the element, his understanding, his compassion. He showed it the good that could be done, the lives that could be saved. Slowly, the element responded. The chaotic energy began to coalesce. The vibrations subsided, and the device Thorn was using sputtered and died. The station shuddered, but it held. With the device disabled, Jax turned her full attention to Thorn. A fierce battle ensued. Jax's combat skills pitted against Thorn's desperate fury. Finally, with a well-aimed kick, Jax disarmed Thorn, sending him sprawling to the ground. His remaining agents, seeing their leader defeated, surrendered. Kevin, still connected to the element, focused his will. He channeled the element's power, directing it to the station's damaged life support systems. The lights flickered back on, the air grew clean and breathable, and the station hummed with renewed energy. The damage caused by Thorn's sabotage began to heal, the cracks in the walls closing, the scorch marks fading. Thorn, defeated and disarmed, lay on the floor, his eyes filled with a chilling realization. I only wanted to protect everyone, he whispered, his voice barely audible. I was afraid of the unknown, of the chaos. I thought power had to be centralized, control. Jax approached Kevin, her face etched with gratitude and respect. You did it, Miller, she said, a hint of awe in her voice. You saved us all. You and Stella. Stella's energy form pulsed gently. The galaxy needs understanding, Jax. It needs empathy. Kevin has shown that it is possible. Kevin looked at Stella, a sense of wonder filling his heart. What now? He asked. Now, Stella replied, we embark on a journey. We will explore the galaxy, using the element's power to promote peace, understanding, and cooperation. We will show others that fear can be overcome, that even the most terrifying beast can be understood. Days after the near-catastrophic event, a new quiet settled over Station Epsilon. Kevin stood beside Stella, her energy form contained within a specially designed mobile unit, looking out at the stars through the station's viewport. The cosmos stretched before them, a vast canvas of infinite possibilities. Jax approached them, a rare smile gracing her lips. The Federation is already implementing new protocols, Miller. Your unique approach has changed everything. She paused, a hint of emotion in her voice. Thank you for everything. Kevin smiled, his gaze fixed on the stars. He felt a profound sense of peace and purpose. Beside him, Stella pulsed with gentle energy, a silent affirmation of their shared journey. Kevin and Stella stood side by side, looking out at the stars, a symbol of hope and the boundless possibilities of the future. The galaxy had feared the alien beast, but one human's comfort had revealed a friend, and in doing so perhaps shown the galaxy how to find many more.